I guess this whole story starts with a man I never knew. That is, I knew about him, but I had never seen him or even his photograph. My mother had two brothers named Wendell and James. Sometime before I was born, James did something that disgraced or greatly embarrassed the family, and he broke away. Growing up, I would sometimes hear my mother or grandmother say, "I wonder where James is now?" And when I asked who James was, they would suddenly change the subject. It wasn't until I was 17 that I learned that James was my uncle, and I was 19 before I found out why he was an outcast in the family. My uncle Wendell was married to a woman named Betty, and one day he came home unexpectedly and found Uncle James and Aunt Betty making a beast with two backs. When the smoke cleared and the dust settled, Uncle James left and was ostracized by his family. As far as I know, none of the family members saw or spoke to him again. This is not to say that no one wanted this. Grandmother took his departure hard. At family dinners, she said a prayer and asked God to watch over James and keep him safe. She did this, even though it was a sore spot for Uncle Wendell. At the mention of Uncle James, he would curse, throw down his napkin, get up and leave the table. It got to the point that he began to appear late and after saying a prayer so that he did not have to listen to it. The years passed, and life went on as usual. When I was 20, my father left my mother for some woman he worked with, and the woman's husband tracked them down and shot them both. When I was 22, my grandmother died in her sleep. Cancer took my mother when I was 29. My last living relative was Uncle Wendell, but his life was taken by a drunk driver when I was 33. Interestingly, the largest wreath at the funeral was accompanied by a card that simply said, "Mourning," and was signed with a single letter, J. I was 35 when I received a letter from the law firm of Barton, Murray, and Weston asking me to contact them about an important matter. It turned out that Uncle James died, and, apparently, he never married or had children, and I, as his last living relative, inherited his property. A man I never knew left me $11 million. At 22, I graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in civil engineering and a wife. I met Marcy on my first day on campus and fell head over heels in love with her. She was absolutely gorgeous and looked like the sexiest woman I had ever seen. I was a very inexperienced 18-year-old guy, but I knew that if Marcy wasn't already hooked, she would be soon. So I plucked up the courage to walk up to her, introduce myself, and invited her to have lunch with me. Shock, surprise, stunned, and delighted describe how I felt when she said yes. A dinner date followed, which led to several more, and then one wonderful June evening, Marcy gave herself to me. We were inseparable until the end of the year. I proposed to her on Christmas Eve, and she accepted. We decided that we would both finish college before we tied the knot. Life was good until spring break. Several of Marcy's friends wanted her to go to Florida with them, and she agreed. I was working part-time and couldn't leave work, so I had to stay home. I couldn't bear to see her leave. This will be our longest separation since our first day of college. When she returned from her trip, we had sex as newlyweds for 5 or 6 days. And then things started to change. We would make dates, and at the last minute she would cancel them. I tried to make a date on then, and she said that she couldn't do it that evening. I started hearing rumors about her spring break spree, how every night there was a different guy in her bed. Naturally, I didn't believe in anything until Saturday night at the party. There was a party at Stella Hansen's house, but I had to work that evening, so I told Marcy I couldn't go to the party. She said that in that case she wouldn't go either, and we made plans for the next day. I was busy wiping down tables when a couple of guys I knew walked in. One of them, Harry Short, was surprised that I was working. I saw Marcy at Stella's and thought you were probably there too. That's strange, I thought. Marcy told me she wouldn't go. I finished work at 11 and headed to Stella. I walked in just in time to see Marcy walking up the stairs with a guy I didn't know, holding hands. I was stunned and stood silently, frozen for a couple of seconds, and then followed them. I had been to Stella's house before and knew that upstairs there were only 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. When I went upstairs, I saw that both doors to the bathroom and two to the bedroom were open, and Marcy was not in the hallway. I may not be Sherlock Holmes, but even I could guess where Marcy and the guy she walked up the stairs with could be found. The only question was, which of the two closed doors was Marcy behind? I stood there trying to collect my thoughts, and just as I decided to put my ear to one of the doors and try to hear something, the door opened and Charlie Smithers and his girlfriend came out. He smiled at me and asked, "Trying to find an empty bedroom for you and Marcy?" I smiled and nodded affirmatively as I watched him and Donna walk down the hallway and then down the stairs. I turned my attention to the other door and moved towards it, but then stopped. Only a few minutes have passed, and if I go in now, I might find them just talking. I needed to give them time to figure everything out. I was hoping like hell that it would be something innocent, that they were just sitting and talking. And they went upstairs just to get away from the noise of the party and have a little privacy. That's what I was praying for, but the rumors about what Marcy did over spring break, coupled with the fact that she and her boyfriend were holding hands walking up the stairs, didn't give me much hope. I waited another 3 minutes and then opened the door and entered. Marcy was lying on her back, her skirt hiked up to her waist, and her legs resting on the guy's shoulders. I approached them. The guy saw me, but didn't even slow down. "You can take her next," he said. Marcy's eyes were closed, and I leaned close to her ear. "Marcy, baby, open your eyes and get a surprise." She opened her eyes, saw me, and her face turned slightly pale. "Keep the ring, Marcy. Maybe you can pawn it and get enough to buy condoms. I noticed your new boyfriend doesn't wear them, and we both know that's not safe, right?" I turned and left the room while Marcy cried, "Oh no, oh God, no, please don't leave." And the door closing behind me cut off everything else. As I walked down the stairs, I saw Nancy Newbert, one of the girls Marcy had gone to Florida with, and I approached her. "Thank you for convincing Marcy to come with you on spring break. If she had stayed here, I would never have known that she was a traitor." I turned away from her and left the party. The next day I had to work, and around 2, Marcy came in and sat in the cubicle. I refused to even pretend to see her, even though she was sitting in my section. I refused to serve her. I sent one of the other waiters to her, but he came back and said that she wanted me, and that's why she sat in my section. Just tell her that if she's going to dinner, you'll be her waiter, and if she's going to wait for me, she'll starve. That evening, after finishing work, I found Marcy sitting on the fender of my car. I walked past her and was already unlocking the door when she slid down the wing and said, "We need to talk, Rob. I've already heard everything I wanted, Marcy. What you shouted to your new boyfriend was loud and clear and said everything I was wondering. He's not my new boyfriend, Rob, and that's what I need to talk to you about. Why do you need to talk about something with me? I already heard about the revolving door in your hotel room when you were in Panama City, and then the guy from last night. And considering how many times you've canceled dates with me, and how many times you simply couldn't see me on a given night, I'm sure he's not the only one you've had since you got back from Florida. I even doubt that was the first time. How many times did you stab me in the back before spring break? Why would you even want to talk to someone you care so little about that you need to have fun with others? That's not true, Rob, and that's why we need to talk. I don't want to talk to you, Marcy. I don't even want to look at you. Just go away and leave me. I can't leave you, Rob. You must hear what I have to say, and I will pester you, stalk you, watch you, and pursue you until you listen to me. I didn't think I could stand it if she kept hanging around trying to get to me, so I decided to end it. Get in the car, Marcy. I'll give you 10 minutes if you promise me that this is the last time I have to look at you. I promise, if that's what you really want after you hear what I have to say. I shrugged, got into the car, and reached to open the passenger side door so she could get in. She sat up and turned to face me. First of all, the guy last night was not my new boyfriend. You are my man, Rob, and you always will be. I started to say something, but she said, "No, Rob, you only gave me 10 minutes, so listen while I try to tell you everything. When I'm done, you can speak. The guy last night was just a guy I met at a party, and he hit on me so much that I went up to the room with him. This is the third one since I returned from Florida, and yes, I dated other guys on the nights I crashed my dates with you, but only 2 of them interested me enough to get me into bed. There was no one before Florida. I don't know what you heard about what happened during spring break, but I didn't have a revolving door. There were only two of them. When we met, Rob, I wasn't a virgin, but before I met you, I had only had one boyfriend. He was the one who got my virginity, and after that we had sex maybe half a dozen times, and to be honest, I didn't enjoy it very much. It was like the old Peggy Lee song, "Is that all?" You remember that I was in no hurry to let you make love to me. When I finally did it, it was incredible. The difference between you and John was like night and day. Everything was great until I left for spring break. To be honest, I never intended to do what happened, but one night at a beach party I was high and a really cute guy hit on me. He was trying really hard and I was drunk enough to let him keep trying. I started thinking about what it would be like to let him get where he wants to go. I was thinking about how different you are from John, and I was wondering if this guy would be different from you and John. Then I decided that you were 2,000 miles away and would never know, so I took him to my room. He was different from you and John. Not better than you, and not even as good, but different. He looked like the Energizer Bunny, just keeping moving. It was pure sex. Wild, but just sex. 2 days later, I met another guy, and he was interesting enough to make me wonder what he might be like. He was different from you, John, and Troy. Barry was fat, all over the place, if you know what I mean. 2 weeks after I got back, I met Harry, and he approached me, and, curious after my experience in Florida, I tried it on. Again, different, but not better. When it was all over and he left, I lay there and thought about different things. 5 different guys, all different. Then I dated Ralph, and he turned me on so much that I tried him too. Again, not amazing, but different. I decided I wanted to try about a dozen more to satisfy my curiosity before I ran out. There was never any doubt that I was yours. I have never had any doubt that you are the man I love and with whom I want to spend the rest of my life. But I had this curiosity and I thought I could satisfy it without you ever knowing. But it turns out I was wrong. And yet this does not change the fact that I love you, and you are the man with whom I want to spend my life. She sat and looked at me, waiting for me to say something, and after a few seconds, I spoke. "What do you want me to say, Marcy?" "How should you be, girl? How to satisfy your curiosity?" "I want you to say it doesn't matter." "To say that it doesn't matter? Are you crazy?" "Of course it matters." "No, I'm not crazy, Rob. I don't know how many girls you had before me because we never discussed our previous sex life, but you can't say that other girls aren't interested in you. I saw you looking at Sally Jennings' size 4 breasts. I saw you watching Marsha Moss when she walked around in short skirts on her long legs. Can you honestly tell me that you've never wondered what it would be like to have sex with them? Of course, you were interested in these 2 and a few others, but you never tried to satisfy your curiosity because you felt that it would be unfair to me. Now is the time to satisfy your curiosity before you stand before the pastor and take your marriage vows. That's all I do, Rob. Taking advantage of the fact that she is still single. All I'm saying, Rob, is that it's time to satisfy your curiosity and desires while we're still single. Go and try, but do it with confidence, knowing that I love you and will still marry you if you say yes. Go and have sex with others, Rob, and don't feel guilty about it. You're serious now, aren't you? Yes, seriously. I'm curious and I want to satisfy that curiosity without losing you. Maybe we could do something like spend 2 weeks together and then 2 weeks apart. For 2 or 3 weeks, it's just the 2 of us. And then for another couple of weeks, we satisfy our curiosity. I ask, Rob, that you trust me. Believe that I will always be yours, just as you will always be mine. She showed me her left hand. I took off your ring, Rob, but I'm still wearing it. I have it on a chain around my neck. I ask you to believe that one day I will return it to you and ask you to put it on my finger again. Please think about it, Rob. Once again, I love you, and I don't want you to doubt it for even a second. She got out of my car, walked over to hers, turned around and blew me a kiss, then got in her car and drove away. I actually thought about what she said, and my thoughts weren't quite the same. She made some valid points. I fantasized about Sally's breasts and more than once wondered about Marsha's long legs. There were a lot of other girls that I wanted to try, but I never did, and would never try because I was already made up. Doing anything with any other girl would be cheating on Marcy, and in my opinion, you don't cheat on someone you love. But Marcy cheated on me. So could she really love me? I doubted it very much. I could probably forgive her first fling with Troy. Could probably take it as a result of the wild party atmosphere, that she was high and out of control. But the second guy and 3 others since she got back, never. So I went home feeling exactly as any man would feel after being thrown out in the trash by someone he loved. I was sitting on the couch, staring at the wall, when it didn't occur to me that sulking and moping is stupid. Marcy cheated on me, but it wasn't the end of the world. I was pretty good looking, and there were thousands of Sallys and Marches around campus. It may take me a while to get over Marcy emotionally, but it can be done. As for Marcy, getting even, taking revenge on people who deceive you, is part of the human condition. It may never happen, but the desire to do it is always there, and I thought about it when I went to bed. The next day, I was sitting in class listening to Markham drone on and on about data values, their mean, modulus, and median, when it hit me. Give Marcy what she wants. Why not? Give her a couple of weeks together and a couple of weeks apart, as she wants. Ensure myself a guaranteed amount of sex, while I go and try Sally and Marcia, and look for a replacement for Marcy. Let her feel safe, and the day she gives me back the ring to put it back on her finger, I will laugh in her face and throw the ring in the trash. So I did. That same evening, I called her and told her that I thought her plan was good, but with only one condition. I don't want to see her with another man, and we can often meet even during those weeks when we are apart, so we should not be at the same party, at the same dance, in the same restaurant, or anywhere else. She agreed. The best part is that I was able to use this condition against her. I knew the places she liked to go, the people whose parties she liked to go to, and I could always be the first to book a place. Hello, honey. Just wanted to let you know that I'll be at David's party tomorrow night. Hi, Marcy. Just calling to let you know that tomorrow I'm taking my lady to dinner at Augie's and then to a dance at the Pit. Hopefully she'll be so mad about not being able to go to Dave's party or dance at the Pit that she won't have much of a good time with anyone else. Over the next 2 years, everything went exactly like this. 2 or 3 weeks with Marcy, and then a couple of weeks in the field. I was never able to seduce Sally, but Marcia was able to wrap her legs around me and lock her ankles behind my back. There were half a dozen others, some good, some not so good, but what do they say? I've had good and bad, but even the worst I've ever had was wonderful. The only problem I had was that no matter how good-looking a girl was, she wasn't half as good as Marcy, and I found myself looking forward to our weeks together. I didn't know how Marcy spent her time apart, but I got the impression that no matter how often she dated, nothing sexual happened. Her stated goal was exactly a dozen, and she already had 7 when she told me about it. A year after our agreement, I jokingly asked her how many notches she had on her bedpost, and she replied, 3 more left, just 2 guys in a year? I wanted to ask her what her selection process was like, but I decided I didn't really want to know, so I kept my mouth shut. And then Robin Atlee came on stage, and things got interesting. Robin was very pretty, smart, and witty, and for some reason she decided that I was the one she wanted as her soulmate. It was a unique experience for me. I've never been approached before. Well, maybe it's wrong, but Robin started courting me before I even knew who she was. I was at a party Marcy wanted to go to, but I called her first, and was leaning against the makeshift bar with a beer in my hand, when this sexy red-haired girl came up to me and said, "Hey, hello, my name is Robin." I told her my name, and then she asked who I was at the party with, and I replied that I had come to the bachelor party. She smiled widely and said, "I'm here with a guy who turned out to be a big jerk. I think you're cute, and I'm asking you out on a date tomorrow night. What do you say to this?" I think that since I'm not completely brain dead, I should say, "Would you like to come with me tomorrow?" We had dinner, watched a show, and then went for drinks. When I walked her to the door, she said, "If I really like a guy, Rob, I usually kiss him on the first date." And she stood on her tiptoes and offered me her lips. It was burning. And when we broke the kiss, Robin said, "I might like this diet on an ongoing basis. Would you like to try again tomorrow? At the end of our third date, as I walked Robin to her door, she turned to me and said, I'm a very straight woman, Rob, and when I see something I want, I get it. I want you, Rob. She opened the door, walked inside, and then turned to me and asked, Are you coming? I followed her and was still there the next morning. Happy, feeling great, but exhausted. And if someone asked me, What do you think Marcy is doing now? I would probably answer with a question. What Marcy? I had to work that day, and for the first time, I thought about calling in sick and spending the day with Robin. But then she told me she had things to do, so I sucked it up and went to work my shift. I spent the weekend between work and Robin's bedroom and didn't see my apartment for 3 days. Monday was supposed to be the start of my time with Marcy, but Robin wanted me to take her to an art gallery exhibit. So when Marcy called me and asked what time I would be there, I said I'd be busy that evening. There was silence on the other end of the line. I said for the first time that I would not come to her. And then she asked, What about tomorrow? I'm working tomorrow. I think I can wait until Wednesday to see you. I will call you. Good, baby. I love you. Bye. I was busy with Robin on Wednesday, so I forgot to call Marcy. I had work scheduled after class on Thursday, and Robin showed up 20 minutes before the end of my shift. I was in the library and asked Katie to give me a ride here so you could take me home. Don't know. Every time I walk you home, I'm somehow too tired to do anything the next day. Poor baby. Do you want your mom to be gentler with you? I don't know if you are capable of being softer. I just know that I can't afford to fall asleep on business law again. Okay, lover. I promise I'll make sure you get some sleep. On Friday, when I left my 3 o'clock lesson, Marcy was waiting for me in the hallway. What's going on, Rob? I haven't heard from you all week. I was busy, Marcy. With the redhead I saw you with last night, I went down to the restaurant to see if you would have a drink with me when you finished work, and I saw you leaving with her. Her name is Robin, and yes, I was busy with her. This was supposed to be our time. Maybe so, but when I met her, I couldn't tell her to keep me in mind, and I'll call her in 2 or 3 weeks. I need my time, Rob. You just need to tell her that you will be busy for the next 2 weeks. I can't, Marcy. Why? Because I like her, Marcy, and maybe there's something in it. I might want to stay with her. What about me? What about you, Marcy? I never promised you anything. When you said you wanted to give me my ring back someday so I could put it on your finger, I didn't say I would. When you came up with your week-in-a-week plan, I said okay, thinking it might work, but going into your plan, I knew full well that I could meet someone else. Just like you can find a guy who is different enough from the others that you can decide to keep him. You had the right thing, Marcy, but you threw it away because you got curious. You took a chance, Marcy. This is your game, and the dice are still rolling, and when they stop, we will see what numbers come up, yours or someone else's. When will I see you again? I have no idea. When I have a free evening, I'll call you, and if you're not busy with your boyfriend of the week, maybe we can meet. Damn it, Rob, this isn't fair. It was never about finding someone to replace you. It was just a time out so I could satisfy my curiosity. Doesn't matter, I need to run. Otherwise, I'll be late for my next lesson. The rest of the week kept me busy with college, work, and Robin. Robin had to attend a family event out of town this weekend, and I didn't have to work on Saturday, so I called Marcy on Friday. God, Rob, you should have called earlier. I already have a date scheduled for Saturday. Okay, sweetie, have some fun. See you. Bye. On Saturday night, I went to a party at Delta's house. There was Marcia with long legs, and when her boyfriend had drunk so much that he was dead drunk, she asked me to take her home. The next morning, after leaving her house at 11, I went to the Village Inn for breakfast and then went home. Marcy's car was parked in front of the house, and when I drove up and parked next to her car, she got out and stood waiting for me. Last night I tried to call you, about 5 times. I canceled a date to spend time with you, but I was never able to contact you. I looked her straight in the eyes and lied. It wouldn't matter. You said you were busy, so when I hung up, I called someone else. Before you could cancel your date, I already had mine. With whom? None of your business, Marcy. I have never asked you the names of those with whom you have fun, and I will not give the names of those with whom I see. Okay, she said, and then asked, since I'm here, can I come in? Once in the apartment, she immediately reached for my zipper, but I pushed her hand away and she looked offended. Have you ever come to me right after one of your meetings with someone? God, Rob, I would never do something like that. I won't do this to you either. You'll have to wait until I take a shower. I was shampooing my hair when the shower curtain pulled back, and Marcy climbed into the shower with me. I'll take care of your back. 2 minutes later, or maybe a little less, she was leaning against the wall, bent at the waist. Later, in bed, after another round, Marcy said, I am not a fallen woman. I never said that. He spoke, but not directly. The other day you said my boyfriend of the week, and 2 hours ago in the parking lot you mentioned the names of the people I'm having fun with. Since the day we spoke, there have been only 3 of them, and none of them lasted more than 2 days. Almost 2 years and only 3? At this rate, you'll be 40 before you hit your dozen. I will never get this dozen because I have already satisfied my curiosity. The ones I had were all different, but none of them were better than the others, and none of them satisfied me the way you did. No more experiments, Rob. She took the chain off her neck and handed it to me. She was wearing the engagement ring that I had given her, and, handing it to me, she said, Please, Rob. I looked at it for a few seconds and then returned it. I don't think so, Marcy. Please, Rob. You know I love you. So what, Marcy? You told me you loved me before I even gave you the ring, but your love for me didn't stop you from cheating on me. You cheated on me twice in Florida, and cheated on me after you returned from Florida. If I hadn't caught you doing this, you'd probably still be cheating on me, always telling me how much you loved me. I don't need that in a bride. If you feel this way, why didn't you end things with me? Because you're the best sex I've ever had. And when you came up with your plan of alternating weeks, I saw a way to keep having sex with you without being tied down by you. It meant that if I wasn't lucky with someone else, I'd have you to lean on when my week came. You weren't going to put the ring back on me, were you? No. If it had just been that guy, the first one, in Florida, and you confessed when you came back, we probably could have worked this out. But you didn't. You deliberately went with the other one in Florida, and then the ones that were here after you got back. And like I said, if I hadn't caught you at Stella's party, you'd probably still be going around behind my back, trying to satisfy my so-called curiosity. You know that everything is not so simple. If I did that, don't you think there would be more than 3 in 2 years? As for the fact that there were only 3 of them, I only have your word. There could be 300 of them as far as I know, and you are talking about only 3 so as not to look illegible. Believe it or not, Rob, there were only 3 of them. Damn it, Rob. I love you and you know it. There was never anyone who meant anything to me. Don't send me away. I'm not driving you away, Marcy. I'm just not going to marry you. You're still the best sex I've ever had, and you can stay around as long as you want. But all we'll ever be is fuck buddies. I can't make you change your mind if I'm not around, so I guess I'll have to live with it. For the next 2 weeks, if I wasn't with Robin, I was with Marcy. Marcy wasn't at all happy about the time I was spending with Robin, but she knew her place, and she knew her only choice was to accept it or leave, and I knew she wouldn't leave. I suppose I could be considered an ass for using it, and I did. I knew that she loved me. I never doubted it for a second, and I knew that she would hang around until the last possible opportunity, trying to find a way to win me back. And as long as she hung around, I would never feel the need for sex. It didn't matter what happened to the other girls because Marcy was always there to take care of me. There was just one problem. I used to love her. I loved her, but I always heard and believed that once he cheats, he always cheats. But she cheated on me. Robin started making noises about taking our relationship to the next stage, but I wasn't interested. Robin was a very beautiful woman, above average in bed, and a lot of fun to be around. But she wasn't the girl for me long term. She told me a long time ago that she always gets what she wants. Robin was selfish, a girl whose motto was, "We'll do it my way," and "We'll do what I want." This was not a woman I could live with, so I continued to ignore her hints until one day, true to her nature, she told me not to plan anything on Saturday because we were going shopping for a ring. "I'm not ready for this, Robin." "Well, I'm ready. We won't get married until we graduate from college, but there is a lot that needs to be done. I already told my mom to start planning. I saw exactly the ring I needed in Zales. On Saturdays, they open at 10, so we can sleep in a little longer or go out for breakfast first. Didn't you hear what I said, Robin? I'm nowhere near ready to make a decision on this yet." "What decision are you talking about, Rob?" "About the decision to get married. I'm nowhere near ready to get married." "Well, I'm ready, Rob, so it's time for us to move on." It took me a few seconds to decide what to do. Give up some damn good sex or hold off on it a little longer. I decided to end this. "I'm not ready to even think about marriage, Robin, but when I am, it won't be you." She looked stunned and then asked, "What the hell do you mean?" "I mean, I will never marry you. You control me too much, and while I can put up with it while we're dating and being friends, there's no way I'm going to put up with it in marriage. We'll be at each other's throats before our first anniversary even arrives." More things were said, but finally Robin ran out and slammed the door behind her. With Robin gone, I started spending more time with Marcy, and she naturally assumed it was because she was winning me over, and I wasn't trying to dissuade her from that. She worked hard to show me that she was mine and mine alone, and by the end of college, she had managed to convince me and I put the ring back on her finger. We got married a month after graduating from college. The next 5 years flew by. We both excelled in our chosen fields and had the perfect marriage. It all fell apart one Monday in June. I was scheduled to fly to Detroit for contract negotiations and was at the airport checking in when my boss called on his cell phone and told me to change my ticket to an evening flight because he had last-minute instructions for me. He said we would meet him at the Marriott for lunch and discuss the changes. I didn't call Marcy because she was already at work and also knew that I had already left and would be gone for 3 days. I was having lunch with Jack and discussing the latest changes he wanted me to bring up at a meeting in Detroit when something caught my attention. From where we were sitting, I could see the front desk, and I saw Marcy and a man I didn't know walk up to the desk and a few minutes later leave the desk and walk up to the elevators and get into one of them. I excused myself, walked up to the counter and asked the receptionist for the names of the couple who had just checked in. He started saying he couldn't do it when I showed him a $50 bill. "Will there be any trouble?" "Very likely, but not here and not today." He took the bill and handed me a registration card across the counter. It said, "Mr. and Mrs. William Sherman." I copied the information from the card, thanked the receptionist, and returned to dinner with Jack. When lunch ended and Jack finished his briefing, I looked at my watch and saw that I still had 4 hours before I had to go back to the airport. I went into the hotel gift shop and bought Robert Parker's latest novel, then sat in the lobby where I could watch the elevators. I barely read the novel because I had to look up every time I heard the ding of the elevator doors opening. My 4 hours were almost up, and I was just about to get up and leave my vigil when the elevator doors opened and Marcy and Sherman stepped out. I stood up and approached them. "Bill Sherman?" I asked, and extended my hand. He took it to shake it, and I said, "Damn it, Bill. It's been so long since I last saw you. This is Mrs. Sherman, isn't it? You are handsome. You're lucky that you have such a beautiful wife. In any case, it was nice to meet you. We must run. I need to catch a plane." And I left, leaving a deathly pale Marcy and a confused William Sherman. When I got to Detroit, I didn't call Marcy to tell her where I was staying or how to contact me. The meetings in Detroit went well, and I flew home 3 days later. I arrived at 10:30 in the evening and rented a hotel room. The next morning, I went into the office and gave Jack a report on the meeting in Detroit, and then took the rest of the day off. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was at the Morrissey Investigations office, talking to Mr. William Miglio. I told him everything I had on William Sherman and said, I wanted to know everything about this man, where he works, whether he was married or engaged, and any other information that may be relevant to the divorce case. I left there, went to the bank, closed all our accounts, cleaned out the safe, and then moved everything to another bank and opened accounts in my name only. Our state was not at fault, and I will still have to settle with Marcy eventually, but I would rather have the money before the divorce than let her have it and hope I can get my share from her. Then I went home. Marcy wasn't home from work yet, so I used this time to move all my stuff from the master bedroom to one of the spare bedrooms. I went and got a beer out of the fridge and then went out and sat on the patio. The house was nice. I loved the patio surrounded by flower beds and will miss it, unless I could get Marcy to let me buy her out, which would probably be difficult since she loved the place as much as I did. I was drinking a beer and watching the sunset when Marcy came home. She walked out onto the patio and sat down on one of the loungy chairs. "You didn't call." It didn't make sense. It wasn't what you thought. I don't want to talk about it, Marcy. Just save what you want to say until Tuesday. Why should I wait until Tuesday? Because I won't know what to do until Tuesday. I don't understand. And you don't need it. We need to talk now, Rob. We can't let this fester any longer than it already has. Tuesday, Marcy. No, Rob, on Tuesday. I got up and entered the house. I didn't have time to unpack my bag after the trip, so I grabbed it and headed to the front door. Where are you going, Rob? I said Tuesday, but you won't leave me alone, so I'll leave and come back on Tuesday. I left the house and checked it into a motel, then spent the weekend lying by the pool. I met with Mr. Miglio on Tuesday afternoon and then headed home. Marcy either took the day off or left work early because she was waiting for me when I got home. I placed my bag by the front door and headed to the kitchen to get a beer. I opened it, sat down at the kitchen table, and waited for Marcy to come in and sit down. As soon as she sat down, I said, "Okay, Marcy, go ahead. Say your part. But first let me tell you what I already know, so you don't waste too much time lying. I was having lunch with Jack when I saw you and your boyfriend check in. You then took the elevator up to your room, and I went and spoke to the receptionist, who told me that you had checked in as Mr. and Mrs. William Sherman. You took the elevator and came down 4 hours later. I haven't seen you or your boyfriend carry anything resembling a board game, so I'm ruling out checkers, chess, Monopoly, or Scrabble. So tell me where I'm wrong in thinking that you and Mr. Sherman had sex for 4 hours. It wasn't like that at all, Rob. He is not my boyfriend. I don't need a boyfriend, baby. I have you. So tell me, Marcy, what have you been doing for 4 hours? It doesn't matter, Rob. I love you, and you know it. I prove this to you every day. I'm waiting, Marcy. There was nothing special. It had nothing to do with my love for you. I ask for the last time, Marcy, what did you do for 4 hours with your imaginary husband? I'll get an answer, or I'll leave here. Nothing special, Rob. It didn't mean anything. I started to get up. I was just satisfying my curiosity, dear. It didn't mean anything, honestly. You know that I love you, and nothing will ever change that. If it was so insignificant, why can't you tell me what you did? She turned away from me and said quietly, I went with him to see if it was true. To see if it's true, that he has very great dignity. And since you could do it in a minute and a half, even in a dark corner, the question is still, what did you do for 4 hours? It was just curiosity, dear. As soon as I saw him, I just had to understand what it was like. He is not my boyfriend, and I don't have any feelings for him, and it was only one time because I was so curious. And then this whole story came out. Sherman worked alongside her and was apparently an office gigolo. All the single girls, and even some of the married ones, were raving about how great his worth was, and after many months of hearing about it, she gave in. I had to see him, Rob. I just had to. The girls talked about him with such reverence. I just needed to see him. And then? Of course, you just had to try it on? She looked at the floor and could not meet my gaze. Have you ever considered that if he seduced every woman in your office, he also entertained every woman he could get his hands on? You didn't even think about the fact that with all the sex he was having, there was a pretty high chance that sooner or later, some woman would give him something, which he, in turn, would pass on to such a stupid nosy as you? We've been through this story once before with curiosity, Marcy, and I thought you learned a lesson from it, but I guess it's my own fault. I knew that once a cheater, always a cheater, and yet I was stupid enough to take you back. So I think if you took it as if you ever did it again, I would take you back. I have no one to blame but myself. What are you going to do? It's not what I'm going to do, it's what you're going to do. I should throw you out on the street, but I know you love me, so I'll give you one chance and one chance only. There are two things you will have to do. Your object of curiosity is married, so you and I will pay Mr. Sherman back, and you will call the real Mrs. Sherman and tell her what you did with her husband, as well as all the other women in your office. I cannot do it. You do this or you pack up and leave. And this is just the first. Secondly, you must be tested for sexually transmitted diseases. If you pass the test, you can stay. If you fail, you leave here. I refuse to be married to a woman stupid enough to risk her health just because she's curious about another man. Can I? No, you cannot. We're leaving here in 20 minutes to visit Sherman. If you're not in the car when I'm ready to get back into the driveway, it'll be because you're packing up your things. Even if I go with you tonight, if I picked up something from Bill, will you leave me? You understood everything correctly. Can't we wait until the test is over? If I caught something and left anyway, why ruin Bill's marriage? I don't care about him, but why make his wife suffer? You still don't understand, do you? If he passed something on to you, he passed it on to her. And if he didn't pass it on to you, he would eventually pick something up and pass it on to his wife. She should know. I looked at my watch. Get in the car in 10 minutes or start getting ready. The meeting with the Shermans did not go very well. Mrs. Sherman did not like the way Mr. Sherman interacted with the women he worked with. I didn't intervene when Mrs. Sherman slapped Marcy and grabbed her hair, and I smiled when Sherman tried to separate the ladies and Mrs. Sherman kneed him in the groin. When he fell to the floor, I stood up and said, I see that my work here is finished. I went to the door, and Mrs. Sherman shouted, Hey, have you forgotten anything? I turned around just in time to see her kick Marcy in the ass and send her stumbling towards me. Take this slut out of my house. And then she turned and kicked her husband hard in the groin again. Marcy was quiet on the way home, and as soon as we entered the house, she went straight to the bedroom. In the morning, Marcy asked me why I didn't go to bed, and I told her that until I told her, I would sleep in one of the spare bedrooms. I won't go anywhere near you, Marcy. You won't touch me until you get a clean bill of health. Mr. Sherman did give her syphilis, and no amount of begging, pleading, tears, or whining stopped the divorce. So I was 27, recently single and without a pussy for 6 months. That's how long the divorce took. And I didn't want to have sex while still legally married. Fortunately, it wasn't that difficult. I had many friends who were extremely happy to set me up with someone who would take my mind off Marcy and our broken marriage. I was pretty good at keeping score and rarely went a weekend without an overnight visitor. I had a small problem. I loved being married, and I knew I would want to get married again. But I was a bit of a prude. If a girl I liked went to bed with me too easily, I never wanted to marry her. So, on the one hand, I wanted sex and approached girls with the goal of getting them into my bed, but if I succeeded, they were automatically disqualified. On the other hand, if I hit on them and didn't get it, they also didn't get my attention because I left them and went looking for someone I could sleep with. This could have gone on forever if a cup of coffee had not spilled on me. I had breakfast at Patty Ann's Cafe. I went inside, took a booth, and opened the morning newspaper. The head waitress knew me and was used to the fact that I didn't need water or a menu, just coffee with cream. I buried my head in the sports section when I heard, "Oh, damn!" and felt hot moisture splash onto my knees. I jumped out of the stall, grabbed some napkins, and started drying myself off, listening to, "Oh, God, I'm so sorry." I tripped on the carpet. I looked into the deepest blue eyes I had ever seen. They were on the face of an angel, and a hasty examination showed that the complement to the face was an ideal figure. Jessica, the head waitress, hurried over with a wet towel and began to wipe everything off, trying to make the situation a little easier, saying, "I see you've met our new waitress." Meanwhile, the new girl continued, "Forgive, forgive." "No problem," I said. "I just need to get home and change before I can go to work, but I can handle it." "Your breakfast is at my expense," said the angel, and Jessica added, "You need to complain to the boss, Rob." The angel had a panicked look on her face, no doubt expecting that if I complained to Angie, she would be fired. Jessica noticed this look and said, "Not at you, Annie, but at the torn carpet. We will never fix it unless someone complains. This isn't the first time someone has stumbled. How about I tell Angie I tripped over it myself? This way I can save you from this." I saw the relief on her face and added, "But not for free." Her panic returned until I said, "Once we get to know each other a little better, you'll have to have dinner with me." Jessica added her 2 cents. "Don't worry, dear. I met him, and he is a cheerful gentleman. For the next 2 weeks, I made sure that every time I ate at Patty Ann's, I sat in Annie's section. By the end of 2 weeks, I felt that we knew enough about each other that one Friday morning I said, 'I think it's time to collect the debt, Annie.' 'What debt?' 'It's time for you to have dinner with me. I was wondering if you would ever get around to it. A debt is a debt, and it must be paid.' Besides being stunningly beautiful, she was witty and funny. We had the same tastes in music, books, films, and sports. She didn't immediately fall into my bed, but for a change I didn't care. I just loved being with her. We hugged like a couple of teenagers, and on our 6th date, she said, 'Enough of these stupid games. Take me to bed.' She was insatiable. After that first time, every time we got together, the evening ended in her bed or mine. Sometimes in the evenings I would go to her house to take her on a date, but we never left her house. Some evenings I would show up, and she would open the door to greet me, wearing only high heels. 6 months after our first date, I asked her to marry me, and she agreed. I had my bachelor party 4 days before the wedding, and the next night her friends invited her to their version of a bachelor party. The next evening I rang her doorbell, and when she opened it, she handed me my ring and said, "I can't marry you, Rob. I met someone else." She closed the door in my face, leaving me stunned. I knocked on the door for almost 10 minutes, but she did not answer. Finally, a guy came out from next door and told me to stop or he would call the police for disturbing the peace. The next morning at the restaurant, Jessica told me that Annie had called and quit without notice. That evening, I returned to Annie's apartment to find that she had moved out. Almost a month passed before I found out the whole story. The women went to the club for dancers' night. The girls got Annie drunk, and at some point in the evening, Annie got up to go to the bathroom, and when half an hour had passed, a couple of the girls went looking for her. She was found in the back room. One of the girls was almost sure that someone had put something in her drink and taken advantage of it. After that, Annie couldn't look me in the eye, so she ran away. I tried to find her, but no one could tell where she had gone. I sent her several letters telling her that I loved her and that we could work things out, but she never responded. I spent the next 4 years chasing skirts, not allowing myself to get too carried away by any woman. I guess it was inevitable that I would run into someone I wanted to be in a long-term relationship with, and the gods, being the twisted creatures they are, made sure she wasn't all that interested in me. I made it my goal to convince her. It took months, but I finally convinced her to go on a date with me. I invited Sherry to dinner and then to a show. She seemed to be having a good time, so I asked for a second date. I enjoyed the evening, Rob, but I don't think it's worth wasting your or my time on something that won't lead anywhere. How did you know that? How can you say it won't go anywhere if you don't spend a little time exploring the possibilities? This is what I feel, and since my feelings are rarely wrong, I have learned to listen to them. You said rarely. This case may be just one of those. I couldn't influence her, but I kept trying. It took 2 months before I got her to agree to a second date. We had a good time, and I was able to get a third and then a fourth. Suddenly, we were dating constantly, which in turn eventually led us to the bedroom, where I discovered that Sherry and I were perfect for each other. Sherry was completely unpredictable in the bedroom. Some nights she wanted to make love slowly and savor it, and others there was wild sex. Every day was different with Sherry. And you never knew what kind of Sherry you were going to get. But I didn't care because it was all great. Everything went well for over a year, and then I asked Sherry to marry me. But I didn't get the reaction I was hoping for. "I'm not quite ready for this," she said, "and I was hoping that I would have a little more time, but it was going to happen anyway. So I think now is as good a time as any." "I don't understand." "As good a time as any other? For what?" "To finish with you." "Finish with me? Why? What have I done? Besides asking me to marry you?" "Nothing. You are a very good and considerate lover, and in fact you are one of the best I have ever had. But a year is the longest time I have spent with a man. You've already lasted longer than most. Honestly, I've been looking for a replacement for you for about a month now." "A replacement for me?" "I'm not a one-man woman, Rob. I love variety too much to get attached to any one man. I thought about that, but he should be a man who could accept an open marriage, because I would still like variety. And he should be a man who could accept it and live with my disdain. How can I ever respect a man who is willing to let anyone fuck me just so he can keep me? We had a good love affair, but it's time for me to move on. What the hell is wrong with me? I had no problem meeting girls and getting them into bed, and I could keep a lot of them, but I wasn't interested in them enough to do so. Whereas those whom I really wanted to keep, I could not keep. When Sherry left, I panicked and was in a woe-is-me mood when I heard from Barton, Murray, and Weston. When you get as much money as Uncle James left me, something in your life is bound to change. Significantly. The first change occurred in my work. I liked the job I had, but I really didn't need two fools running the place. Their father, who knew what he was doing, died and left the business to his two idiot sons who had no idea about it. So the job went from a place where I liked to work to a place where I preferred not to set foot. I founded my own company, hired the best and brightest from the old firm, and when the dust settled, I also ended up with almost 2/3 of my old firm's clients. After divorcing Marcy, I had to sell my house and I was living in a condominium. So my next step was to join an exclusive country club and buy a 6-bedroom house right on the golf course. I was driving a 6-month-old, 3/4-ton, 4-wheel drive Chevrolet pickup truck that I was happy with, so there were no changes to the vehicle. With Uncle Jimmy's money, I was able to do things I'd never done before but always wanted to do. I started attending the symphony orchestra, going to concerts of new artists, and bought a skybox and season tickets to baseball and football games. I contacted several charities and got on a couple of committees, and I went back to college. When I was working on my degree, money was tight, and I could only take classes that would count toward my degree. Now that I had money, I was going to take classes that I had always dreamed of but couldn't afford. The only thing I didn't do was tell anyone about my sudden luck. By the time Uncle Jimmy gave me his blessing, I had developed a very cynical attitude towards women, and the last thing I needed or wanted was a bunch of gold diggers deciding that they loved me and wanted to be mine forever, or until they can dump me like everyone else, with the added bonus of lightening my bank account. But I still wanted female company from time to time, and not just as bed partners. So how can this be ensured? I was still thinking about this topic when one of the charities I was on the committee for held a fundraiser. They had chosen a well-known author who was going to give a talk and give away several signed first editions of his latest work. It was a $200 a plate dinner with all the proceeds going to charity, and it was one of those events that don't go without a lady. After breaking up with Sherry, I hadn't gotten back into the dating scene, so I didn't know anyone I could ask to be my partner. Mike Devons, who was on the committee with me, asked me what time I planned to arrive, and I said that I could not attend. He asked why, and I answered him, I don't have a lady, and I don't even know anyone I could invite in such a short time. No problem, he said, took out his wallet, took out a business card, and handed it to me. I read, Premier Escorts. I don't need to call a girl. Not all escort girls are called girls. In fact, most of those who work for reputable agencies are not. I've used Premier a dozen times without any problems. I'm not saying sex is out of the question, but it's more of a fun thing to do at the end of the date if you two hit it off. What the hell did I have to lose? I put the card in my pocket, and the next day I called Premier and made an appointment for the afternoon. This was not what I expected. I had to fill out an application, provide personal and business references, and fill out a profile about myself. I was then seated in a booth with a computer screen, a notepad and pencil, and shown a video presentation of available women. I realized that while I was watching the presentation, the woman interviewing me was on the phone checking my references. I wrote down 3 names in a notepad, and when the presentation ended, I gave those names to the administrator, who I would have chosen if she was part of the presentation, and she logged into her computer. After a minute or two, she said, "For the evening in question, Melissa and Karen are already booked, but Ellen is free." Then I think Ellen will suit me. We agreed on a fee, and I was told that I could pick Ellen up at the agency or meet her somewhere. We don't allow girls to be taken from where they live. I said that I was fine with the agency pickup and that I would pick Ellen up at 6 p.m. on free day. The photos of Ellen in the presentation video didn't do her justice. She looked stunning in a black cocktail dress and heels. According to the biography in the presentation, she was 23, but looked like a sophisticated 18 or 19-year-old. It seems that with this beauty hand in hand, I will attract a lot of attention. It was like, I understand what he saw in her, but what should she do with him? God, he's so old he could be her father. I was 13 years older than Ellen, but I played some sports, and I thought I looked 5 years younger than I actually did. As long as no one except Mike knows that she is an escort, I will be the subject of much speculation. The evening went well. Ellen was smart and a very good conversationalist. She also kept abreast of events. On the way to dinner, she asked me if the people there knew that I would have an escort with me, and I said no. She then asked if I wanted them to know. I thought for a while and then said no too. Then we must be prepared for the inevitable questions, such as how long we have been dating, where we met, and the like. We came up with a plausible story, and it was right, because not 5 minutes into the dinner conversation, Betsy Newman asked that very question, and Ellen said, "I backed into his SUV in the library parking lot and left a note under the windshield wiper with my name and phone number. He called me. One thing led to another, and here we are." I smiled and said, "The happiest accident I've ever been involved in." One of the charitable organizations on whose committee I participated organized a fundraiser. They had chosen a well-known author who was going to give a talk and give away several signed first editions of his latest work. It was a $200 a plate dinner with all the proceeds going to charity, and it was one of those events that don't go to without a lady. After breaking up with Sherry, I didn't get back into the dating scene, so I didn't know anyone I could ask to be my partner. Mike Devins, who was on the committee with me, asked me what time I planned to arrive, and I said that I could not attend. He asked why, and I answered him, "I don't have a lady, and I don't even know anyone I could invite in such a short time." "No problem," he said, took out his wallet, took out a business card and handed it to me. I read, "Premier Escorts." I don't need to call a girl. Not all escort girls are called girls. In fact, most of those who work for reputable agencies are not. I've used Premier a dozen times without any problems. I'm not saying sex is out of the question, but it's more of a fun thing to do at the end of the date if you two hit it off. What the hell did I have to lose? I put the card in my pocket, and the next day I called Premier and made an appointment for the afternoon. This was not what I expected. I had to fill out an application, provide personal and business references, and fill out a profile about myself. I was then seated in a booth with a computer screen, a notepad and pencil, and shown a video presentation of available women. I realized that while I was watching the presentation, the woman interviewing me was on the phone checking my references. I wrote down 3 names in a notepad, and when the presentation was over, I gave those names to the administrator, who I would have chosen if she was part of the presentation, and she logged into her computer. After a minute or two, she said, "For the evening in question, Melissa and Karen are already booked, but Ellen is free. Then I think Ellen will suit me. We agreed on a fee, and I was told that I could pick Ellen up at the agency or meet her somewhere. We don't allow girls to be taken from where they live. I said that I was fine with the agency pickup and that I would pick Ellen up at 6 p.m. on Friday. The photos of Ellen in the presentation video didn't do her justice. She looked stunning in a black cocktail dress and heels. According to the biography in the presentation, she was 23, but looked like a sophisticated 18 or 19-year-old. It seems that with this beauty hand in hand, I will attract a lot of attention. It was like, I understand what he saw in her, but what should she do with him? God, he's so old he could be her father. I was 13 years older than Ellen, but I played some sports, and I thought I looked 5 years younger than I actually did. As long as no one except Mike knows that she is an escort, I will be the subject of much speculation. The evening went well. Ellen was smart and a very good conversationalist. She also kept abreast of events. On the way to dinner, she asked me if the people there knew that I would have an escort with me, and I said no. She then asked if I wanted them to know. I thought for a while and then said no, too. Then we must be prepared for the inevitable questions, such as how long we have been dating, where we met, and the like. We came up with a plausible story, and it was right, because not 5 minutes into the dinner conversation, Betsy Newman asked that very question, and Ellen said, I backed into his SUV in the library parking lot and left a note under the windshield wiper with my name and phone number. He called me, one thing led to another, and here we are. I smiled and said, the happiest accident I've ever been involved in. When we arrived, we were each given a ticket for a drawing to determine who would receive the signed first editions that were being given away, and my number won. On the way to the event, Ellen and I were discussing dinner and the surrounding circumstances, and I learned that the author was one of her favorites. So I took the ticket from Ellen, gave her mine, and sent her to get the book. The author personalized the inscription, and Ellen thanked me, asking why I didn't want the book for myself. I lied and told her that, as a committee member, I didn't think it would be right for me to receive the book. The truth was that I had read 2 of his other books and didn't like either of them. After dinner, I asked Ellen if she wanted to stop somewhere and have a few drinks with me, and she agreed. I expected her to do this, since we both knew that she would be at my disposal for another 2 hours. We stopped at Sardi's, and when Giselle came to take our order, Ellen asked for a Cosmo, and I asked for the usual. My regular drink looked like a vodka tonic with a slice of lime, but it was actually a glass of water with a slice of lime. I've gotten into the habit of not drinking when driving, but I've found that simply ordering a Coke when everyone else is drinking makes some people feel uncomfortable. It was as if I didn't drink. They thought there was something wrong with me. As soon as the drinks arrived, I started asking Ellen about what it was like to be an escort. Not questions like, how is a good girl like you, but questions about what she can do. She was hesitant to answer, and I thought maybe she thought I was trying to find out if she was having sex for money or not. So I thought I'd better explain myself. I want to find out if a long-term relationship is possible. By this I mean, can I arrange to have the same girl all the time, or do I have to push my luck every time I go to an agency for services? It depends on the circumstances. From which ones? Say that you need a girl every Thursday or every Saturday. Yes, you could engage her for a certain period of time, or at least as long as she is still working there. But if you call on Tuesday and ask for a specific girl for Thursday, it will depend on whether she is already booked for that evening. Why are you asking? Because I see the need for me to have to use an escort regularly, and showing up with a different woman every time I attend an event will make me look a little flighty, and I don't want to give that impression. How far in advance do you usually know if you need someone? Usually in a week or two, but sometimes in just a day or two. A week would probably give you enough time to guarantee getting the woman you want, but a day or two is doubtful. Can I ask a woman out on a date at the end of work and ask her to inform the agency about it? Or do I always have to go to the agency? You need to go to the agency because she may already be assigned to something else and not yet know about it. We talked some more, and then I took her back to the agency so she could pick up her car. My life returned to normal. Work, night classes at college, classes I wanted to take when I was working on my degree but couldn't, and attending events held by committees I was assigned to. I went on dates every now and then, but never found anyone who interested me. I called the agency several times and asked for Ellen, and when she was with me, I was always pleased. Twice she was unavailable, and once I got Melissa, another time I got Karen, and although they suited me, I didn't enjoy them as much as I did with Ellen. I find myself thinking about Ellen often. She seemed to be everything a man would want in a woman, and I couldn't understand why she wasn't engaged or married. Or maybe she was but wasn't wearing her rings, but I didn't think that was likely. Even though we spent a lot of time together, our relationship did not allow me to ask her about her personal life. Then I ran into problems when it came to follow-up. 4 times Ellen was unavailable. The ones I eventually received met the requirements, but I was less than satisfied. The fall semester had started, and one of the classes I wanted to take could only be taught on Monday and Thursday afternoons. One of the nice things about being a boss was that I could afford to take a break from work during the day, so I signed up for a class. On the second day of class, I arrived on campus early and decided to stop by the student union cafeteria for some cake and coffee. After paying the cashier, I looked around the room for a place to sit and saw Ellen sitting alone at the table, her nose buried in a book. When someone sat down on the chair opposite her without invitation, she looked up irritably, and when she saw that it was me, she smiled and asked, "What are you doing here?" "I have a class at 2 o'clock, and I came early, so I came here and saw you here, so I came up to join you. If I'm in the way, I can leave." No, I was just reading about what Professor Reynolds will be covering today." "I didn't know you were studying here." "Then we have something in common, because I didn't know about you either." We talked, and I learned that she was working on a degree in business management, had been working on it for 3 years, and hoped to graduate in another 3 years. "Why so long?" "Money and time. I have to set aside free days for classes, so I have to work in the evenings. But I can't work full-time in the evenings because I need time to study and work on coursework and the like. Escorting pays pretty well when you work, but with what I make, it's hard to try to squeeze living and school expenses out of it. Sometimes I can only afford 1 or 2 classes a semester, which is why it takes me so long." "What do you mean sometimes it pays quite well?" "To make money, you need to go on dates. Some weeks are good and I get called out for 3 or 4 nights, and some weeks I only get 1 call out. There were even weeks when no one called me at all, so I have to plan my expenses quite clearly." I looked at my watch and saw that it was time to go to class. I told Ellen I'd talk to her later, got up and headed to class. On the way home, the germ of an idea popped into my head, and by the time I got to work the next morning, the germ had already grown. I called Premiere and ordered Ellen on Tuesday next week. They told me she was free that day, and I asked them to tell her to dress casually, jeans would suffice, and to meet me at the Texas Steakhouse on Bromley Lane. I was sitting in a booth when Ellen came in, and when she sat down, she asked me what we were going to do, and I said, "We were having a business meeting." "A business meeting? In jeans? And why on earth did you need to invite me to a business meeting?" "You specialize in business, right? And you have specific knowledge that will be relevant to the discussion." "What knowledge?" "Your knowledge of the escort business." "I don't understand." "Everything will become clear to you at the meeting, but now enjoy your dinner." Over dinner, we talked about college, and I told her why I was taking classes, and she said she knew exactly where I was from. She had classes she would love to take, but they wouldn't help her get her degree. We had dinner with Bailey's Irish cream liqueur, and then I said, "Okay, it's time to talk about business. Where will the meeting be?" "Right here." "I don't understand." "On our first date, I told you how important it is for me to have the same woman as an accompaniment when I need it. At one point I was able to do this, but there were several times when I called the agency and you were unavailable. Last Thursday in the cafeteria, you told me how unpredictable the escort business is in terms of availability, and how you have to budget very carefully to make sure the good weeks make up for the bad ones. I thought about it and decided to propose to you. Wow, I don't think I'll like it. You haven't heard this proposal yet, so don't rush. On our dates, I never even hinted at what just flashed through your head. although I thought about it. Here's the thing. I want the same woman to be with me when I attend social events and don't want to play the lottery by calling an agency. I want to hire you as a permanent escort, a full-time employee. I will hire you through my company so that as a full-time employee, you will be entitled to most benefits, such as health insurance, paid vacation, 401k, sick leave, and the like. You will also receive some of the paid holidays, but not necessarily all of them, because on some of them, you will have to be with me at one event or another. Does this sound like something you might be interested in? Sounds intriguing, at least from a benefit standpoint, but what about the pay? How much did you earn last year? Well, that's the rub. What's the matter? There is what Premier paid me and what I earned under the counter. It's my turn not to want details. Just tell me the total amount of what you earned last year. My income from Premier was a little more than $39,000. And from under the counter, what did you mention? I'll be honest with you, Rob, and I hope this doesn't change your opinion of me too much, but I made another $30 under the counter by providing additional personal services. Additional personal services? Some clients want a little more than just someone hanging on their arm for the evening. It took a second for her words to sink in. Oh God. And why didn't I know this? Because I do this only at the client's request, and even then, not always. I never voluntarily share information. I looked at her for a few seconds and then said, "It does not change anything. The offer is still valid. All we need is to work out the details. Are you ready to pay me $70,000 a year just to be your constant accompaniment?" "No. I'm willing to pay you $40 and put you on my report card as my personal assistant. I appreciate your offer, Rob, but I can't accept it." "And why?" "Money, not counting the income from the floor, which is not so reliable because it depends on the client's demand, and many clients like you never ask. My after-tax income was only about $29.5. After paying for rent, utilities, car insurance, groceries, and the support of the clothes I need for work, I have almost nothing left. My income is what pays for college, and like I just said, it's not very reliable. I understand that you would think about it if there was more money. Of course I would do that. It would give my life some support. I wouldn't wait for the phone to ring to tell me I have work that evening or the next, and knowing I have a regular paycheck would be a relief. But what you're suggesting just won't do for me. This is the case. Without accompaniment, I will not have the opportunity to receive under the table, and it is this money that pays for my education and obtaining this diploma that will lead me to a decent job where I can show my worth, climb the corporate ladder, and ultimately get a position which will bring me a pretty descent and very good salary. I looked at her, mulling over her words, and then said, "40 is the maximum I can count on without resorting to awkward explanations, but there is something else I can do. How much do you value the privacy that living alone gives you?" What kind of question is this? I need to know if you're willing to give up some of this, if the circumstances work out right. Don't know. I'm going to lay it all out, and I want you to spend some time thinking about it. I have a 6-bedroom house in Regency Park. I turned one of the bedrooms into a home office and den. You can take one of the other bedrooms, and I'll turn the next one into an office for you. This will eliminate your expenses for renting an apartment and utilities. I'll give you a company car and a credit card to pay for gas, and you can sell your car. This will eliminate car payments and insurance costs. As for college, I will cover the tuition and books. Since I'll need you most of the time in the evenings, you'll have almost the entire day to attend classes, which means you can take a full course load rather than just taking a couple of classes a semester. Take some time to think about this. I'll call the agency and make an appointment for Saturday evening, and we'll talk about it some more. I saw that she had many questions, but I did not want to answer them until she had time to carefully consider my proposal. As I drove away from the steakhouse, I asked myself if I knew what I was doing, and I had to honestly admit that I didn't. Did this even make remote sense? I used escorts about 4 times a month for an average of $400. It was $1,600 a month or $19,200 a year. Why am I offering 2.5 times as much just to ensure I have the same girl every time I need her? I was single. So what if I show up with another woman every time I go somewhere? Then I started thinking that I would have to come up with some kind of reasonable explanation for the people at work if I ended up putting it on the payroll. I fell asleep, still wondering why I did what I did. By the time I met Ellen on Saturday, I was exhausted thinking about the idea. And the best I could come up with was that I actually liked being with Ellen, and liked being seen with her because she was drop-dead gorgeous, and being seen with a drop-dead gorgeous woman hanging on me didn't hurt my reputation at all. What about the financial justification? What the fuck? I could afford it, and I didn't have to justify myself to anyone. And there was something else. One more very important thing. It took a while before I admitted it to myself, especially after all my previous experiences, but I wanted to seduce Ellen. I wanted to seduce her, but I knew I couldn't have her. At least, not the way I wanted. She would never be interested in someone my age, but even though I couldn't have her, I could be there for her. I could have gotten her one way because she said herself that she provided extra services to some clients, but I didn't want that. It would change the relationship in ways I might not like. So, what do you think of my proposal? I asked Ellen at a table in a restaurant. I like it because it will allow me to concentrate on my studies, but I have some concerns. And which ones? Two, and actually serious ones. First, I give up the apartment, say goodbye to the agency, and a month later you change your mind. There would be no apartment, no job, and no full-time college course that I would have to drop out of to use the time to find a job. Next comes the issue of privacy. I don't have a boyfriend right now, but if and when I get one, how can I bring him home? The thought of Ellen having a boyfriend didn't excite me at all, but I had to expect that he might show up at some point. I just need to get this out of my head. To allay your first concern, I will enter into a legally binding contract with you that includes a renewal clause and financial penalties for early termination. I'll lock him up for 2 years. This will give you enough time to finish college and then figure out what you will do with your degree. Taking a full load, you'll probably be done in a year or a year and a half, and 2 years will give you some cushion. After 2 years, we can discuss contract extension. Regarding your second concern, I don't see a problem. The company has an account with the Best Western hotel chain, and I will add your name to the list of those authorized to use this account. If you don't feel comfortable bringing him home, you can use Best Western. What else? What should I tell my mother? It only depends on you. Tell her whatever you want. Just let me know so that if it comes to that, I can support you. Maybe tell her that I hired you to sit at my house because I travel a lot on business. By the end of the evening, she had decided to accept the offer, and on Monday notified the agency and informed her landlord that she would not be renewing her contract at the end of the month. 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday, I helped her move her things into her house in Regency Park. Thursday morning, I had to question my sanity in making a deal with Ellen. I got up at my usual 5 a.m. to do my morning workout on the equipment I had set up in my basement. When I got there, I found that Ellen was already up and working out on the exercise machine. She was wearing very short shorts and clearly wasn't wearing a bra under her tank top. Instant, obvious reaction. To prevent Ellen from noticing, I had to practice with my back to her. And that was just the beginning. Her favorite sleeping outfit seemed to be an oversized t-shirt, and she didn't think twice about moving around the house in the morning wearing just that, and most of the time, without a bra underneath. What really got to me was what happened when I told her that I was a member of the country club and put her name on the list as a member of my family. One Saturday around noon, she came out of her room wearing what she laughingly called a bikini, but it was nothing more than 3 very small triangular pieces of fabric held together by a few pieces of string, and told me she was going to the club to lie by the pool and soak up the sun. Luckily, I was wearing baggy sweatpants at the time, so she couldn't see how it affected me. I pointed to the scraps of fabric and asked, "In that, Certainly. What's wrong with him? Only that you'll give some of these old farts a heart attack. I hope no one drowns because the lifeguard won't pay attention to anything but you. You sound so sweet. She turned and walked towards the door, and I saw this amazing ass with a tiny string running between her butt cheeks, and I was amazed that I didn't faint from all the strain. 2 months passed, and I used Ellen on average twice a week, and usually took her out for dinner on Saturday or Sunday. She seemed very pleased with our agreement, and there was no awkwardness in the house. The only problem I had was with my accountant, who said that I couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do what I did while running through the company's books. In the end, I had to tell him to do it, and then do everything possible to ensure it was legal. If you have to pay any additional taxes or anything else, just do it. What the heck? I yelled at him. It's my damn money, and I'll do whatever I want with it. One evening at a charity event, Monica Coyce was talking to me and Ellen and suddenly asked out of the blue, "When are you going to put the ring on her finger, Rob?" Ellen laughed and said, "He is afraid to propose to me. I think he's too old for me." "Isn't that so?" Monica asked. "Not in the least. You better hurry, Rob, before she runs away." When Monica walked away, Ellen said, "We spend a lot of time together at these events. Maybe for the sake of appearances, we should buy me a ring to wear when we go to one of them." Where did this "he thinks he's too old for me" come from? I had to say something, and this was the first thing that came to my mind. Just in case you were wondering, that's not true. Is this really not true? Like I told Monica, not in the least. The next day was Saturday, and I took Ellen to a jewelry store and asked her to pick out a ring. She chose a small, inexpensive engagement ring, but I said no. If we're going to do this, we need to be serious about it. Choose something that's at least half a carat. You are sure? I can't let anyone think I'm cheap when it comes to my lady. Ellen chose a single half-carat diamond set in platinum, and it was the right size for her finger, so we left the store with it in the ring. We went to lunch, and when we finished eating and drank a cup of coffee after eating, Ellen asked, "Can I get a little personal now?" "I think so. Why do we do what we do? I don't understand our relationship at all. You seem like the perfect catch for some lucky girl. Why do you need me? Why is this ring not on the real bride's finger? At first I thought you were gay or one of those guys with erectile dysfunction and using me as a disguise, but sometimes I see that there is nothing wrong there. What's going on, Rob?" I looked at her for a few seconds, trying to come up with a reasonable lie, but then I decided to hell with it all and told the truth. I am in a position where I need a woman to fulfill the role that you perform. And I'm one of those guys who needs female company but doesn't trust women anymore. I told her everything from Marcy to Sherry, and then I said, I just can't let that happen to me again. So I decided the best thing for me was to do what we're doing now. Then the next question is, why didn't you go further? I told you when you first brought this up that I sometimes provide extra services. Why didn't you take advantage of this? I explained my thoughts to her, and she looked at me as if I had two heads. I know you have urges, Rob, and I can't believe that a healthy man like you is happy without sex. I'm not happy, I said, and then told her about my weekly visits to a certain girl. And you plan to live like this for the rest of your life? I shrugged and asked for the bill. On the way home, she was silent, and when we arrived, she left in her car to go shopping. When she came back, she made dinner, and we got to talking over dinner, and then she went to her room to work on her coursework that was due the following week. I watched TV for a couple of hours, and then decided that was enough for today. I woke up thinking I was dreaming, only to find Ellen lying in my bed. In my sleep, I muttered, "What are you doing here?" She broke away from me and said, "Saved you $1,500. But I don't want to." Shut up. You have no say in this matter. Afterwards, we fell asleep, cuddled up to each other. When I woke up in the morning, I was alone in bed. I got up, took a shower, and headed to the kitchen to make coffee. Entering the kitchen, I saw Ellen preparing breakfast. Naked! She stopped what she was doing, came over to me and kissed me. I usually don't cook in the nude. This is just my way of letting you know that last night was not spontaneous and unique. If you are stupid enough to say no, I will respect your wishes. Otherwise, get used to the fact that I am your bed buddy. Why? Why did you do it? And why do you want to keep doing it? For several reasons. First of all, I'm a healthy woman with a pretty good sex drive. And with college, and what I do for you, I haven't had time to find a boyfriend. Secondly, I wanted to take your pants off since our first date, but one of my ironclad rules was that I would never make the first move. I always waited for a client to call me. You have no idea how difficult it was for me to adhere to this rule when it came to you. I kept waiting for you to say something, but you never said anything. When you proposed to me, I was sure that we would end up in your bed on the first evening that I was here, but this did not happen, and yesterday I found out why. So I decided that if you are not going to take this step, then everything will depend on me. Last night I took the bull by the horns and here we are. Don't panic, baby. I'm not looking for anything from this other than sexual gratification. That Sunday we didn't get dressed, following each other around the house and catching up. That night, Ellen moved from her bedroom to mine. For the next 6 months, Ellen and I lived practically as husband and wife. At events, people noticed the engagement ring and questions began. When is the wedding? Ellen had said that this would only happen after she graduated with her diploma, and the thought of actually receiving that diploma filled me with dread. Once she gets it, I'll lose her. The one thing I've never done is lie to myself, so I had to face the facts. I loved her. I loved her and didn't want to lose her, but at the same time I was afraid to commit myself. I still had a mistrust of women, even though something inside me screamed, Ellen is different, Ellen is different. And then there was the fact that Ellen never saw our relationship as anything other than a business arrangement with a friends with benefits aspect. But my fear of losing her was greater than the sum of all my other fears, and so I took the plunge. It was at a benefit for the Salvation Army, and Ellen and I were talking to Horace Briscoe when Gail Briscoe came up to us. Have you already set a date? She asked. Before Ellen could answer, I said, she's graduating in May next year, so we're planning a wedding in June. I'm not sure yet if it's the first week or the second, so reserve both. I expect to send out invitations in the first week of May. Ellen looked at me dumbfounded as Horace and Gail said they wouldn't miss it for the world, and then turned and went to talk to Stan Whitman. Ellen looked at me with an expression I couldn't read and then said, it seemed to me that I missed something. I seem to have forgotten about the conversation in which we set the wedding date. I also missed something else. Was I asleep when you asked me to marry you? That must have been it. You're wearing a wedding ring, and I couldn't put it on you if you didn't say yes. Are you serious? Yes, seriously. Why did everything turn 180 degrees? I remember you telling me that you didn't trust women and that you would never put yourself in a position to get hurt again. It was before you. It dawned on me that if I didn't make a single move, you would graduate, get your diploma, and move on with your life. I don't think I could go home without you there. I didn't have the courage to ask you directly, so I provoked you tonight. Don't you think that maybe you should have talked to me before you told Horace and Gail what you told them? What if I said, oh no, that's not true? Why would you do this? It was you who told everyone that we would set a date as soon as you received your diploma. Well, graduation is almost here. You're dodging the problem, Rob. What if I don't want to marry you? Then I don't think you'll do it. What makes you think that I would marry you? You seemed happy living with me and sharing my bed, so why wouldn't I think that you might marry me? What we did is not the same as being married. Of course, the same thing. We do everything together. We do everything for each other. We're damn sure we're a perfect match for each other when it comes to sexual intimacy. We snuggle and hug and do everything married couples do. Jesus, Ellen, we even go grocery shopping together, so don't tell me that what we do isn't the same as being married. I love what we do and I want to continue doing it. This means I have to marry you before you can leave. This is not the place to have this conversation, Rob. We'll talk about this when we get home. The drive home was quiet as Ellen looked out the passenger window. When we got home, she walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa. As soon as I sat down, Ellen said, "I don't want to get married, Rob." She paused and then said, "No, not like that. I don't want to get married now. I was looking forward to graduating so I could have my own life, so I can get a real job and live a normal life, not a man-centered life. To wake up in the morning and not wonder if I'm going to have to go to some cocktail party or whatever with some creep who may have passed the agency test but has bad breath or body odor. To be able to go home from work knowing that I could just freak out and not get dressed or put on makeup for a man I had never seen before and would probably never see again. What I was looking forward to was the existence of a free person. I'm not against men, Rob. I just need a break from them. For the last 4 years, my life has revolved around men. 2, 3, or 5 different men every week. Dates that I can't refuse because I need money. I need some me time, Rob. I want to be alone for a while, when I don't have to devote time to anyone but myself. I sat and listened to her and understood what she was saying, but understanding this did not ease the pain I was beginning to feel. Another woman I wanted didn't want me. It didn't help that I did this to myself. I swore that I would never allow another woman to dig her claws deep enough into me to hurt me. That's why I went down the escort route in the first place. It was my own damn fault. Ellen read my face and quickly said, "It's not your fault, Rob. I'm just not ready. I am happy to tears that you want me enough to want to marry me. I'm just not ready." I had nothing to answer, so I silently shrugged, stood up, and left the room. I undressed and, due to the cigarette smoke that was present at the event, decided to take a shower before going to bed. I was washing my hair when the curtain parted, and Ellen walked into my shower. "Nothing has changed, Bobby," she said, taking soap and a washcloth and starting to wash me. The result was predictable. Afterwards, lying in bed and looking at the ceiling, I thought about her comment. Of course, everything has changed. She will leave. In some ways, it will be even worse than with Marcy, Annie, and Sherry. With those 3, it all happened quickly. Boom, boom, and it was over. Except for the pain. But with Ellen, I still had 7 more months to wait for the end. 7 months for it to eat me up, and then God knows how long it will last after she's gone. I wasn't strong enough. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't suffer for the next 7 months. The next morning, as we sat down to breakfast, I asked her if she knew where she would like to live when she moved out. I didn't think much about it. I still have time before that happens. And what? I thought we could use this weekend to look at apartments. She looked at me for a few seconds and then said, "It doesn't have to be like that, Bobby." "No, it must, Ellen. It'll all be over when you graduate from college, and I just can't suffer for 7 months knowing what's coming. It's better to take a break now so I can start trying to deal with this. My deal with you remains the same, but instead of living here, you will live in your own apartment. I'll take care of the rent and utilities for the first few years, but otherwise, nothing will change." She put down her fork and said, "Fine, if you want so." She stood up, scraped the plate into the garbage disposal, put it in the dishwasher, and left the room without another word. Ellen stayed in her room that evening, and on Saturday at breakfast, she handed me a list of apartments she wanted to see. She said that she liked the 4th one, which we watched, so she prepared the documents. She signed a 1-year lease, and I wrote out a check for the first year and a security deposit. From the moment she sat down at the breakfast table until she signed the lease, I don't think we said more than 75 words to each other, and the drive home was a silent one. As soon as we got home, I handed her the credit card and said, on the way home, she was silent, and when we arrived, she left in her car to go shopping. When she came back, she made dinner, and we got to talking over dinner, and then she went to her room to work on her coursework that was due the following week. I watched TV for a couple of hours, and then decided that was enough for today. I woke up thinking I was dreaming, only to find Ellen lying in my bed. In my sleep, I muttered, "What are you doing here?" She broke away from me and said, "Saved you $1,500. But I don't want to." "Shut up. You have no say in this matter." Afterwards, we fell asleep, cuddled up to each other. When I woke up in the morning, I was alone in bed. I got up, took a shower, and headed to the kitchen to make coffee. Entering the kitchen, I saw Ellen preparing breakfast. Naked! She stopped what she was doing, came over to me and kissed me. I usually don't cook in the nude. This is just my way of letting you know that last night was not spontaneous and unique. If you are stupid enough to say no, I will respect your wishes. Otherwise, get used to the fact that I am your bed buddy. Why? Why did you do it? And why do you want to keep doing it? For several reasons. First of all, I'm a healthy woman with a pretty good sex drive. And with college, and what I do for you, I haven't had time to find a boyfriend. Secondly, I wanted to take your pants off since our first date, but one of my ironclad rules was that I would never make the first move. I always waited for a client to call me. You have no idea how difficult it was for me to adhere to this rule when it came to you. I kept waiting for you to say something, but you never said anything. When you proposed to me, I was sure that we would end up in your bed on the first evening that I was here, but this did not happen, and yesterday I found out why. So I decided that if you are not going to take this step, then everything will depend on me. Last night I took the bull by the horns and here we are. Don't panic, baby. I'm not looking for anything from this other than sexual gratification. That Sunday we didn't get dressed, following each other around the house and catching up. That night, Ellen moved from her bedroom to mine. For the next 6 months, Ellen and I lived practically as husband and wife. At events, people noticed the engagement ring and questions began. When is the wedding? Ellen had said that this would only happen after she graduated with her diploma, and the thought of actually receiving that diploma filled me with dread. Once she gets it, I'll lose her. The one thing I've never done is lie to myself, so I had to face the facts. I loved her. I loved her and didn't want to lose her. But at the same time, I was afraid to commit myself. I still had a mistrust of women, even though something inside me screamed, Ellen is different, Ellen is different. And then there was the fact that Ellen never saw our relationship as anything other than a business arrangement with a friends with benefits aspect. But my fear of losing her was greater than the sum of all my other fears, and so I took the plunge. It was at a benefit for the Salvation Army, and Ellen and I were talking to Horace Briscoe when Gail Briscoe came up to us. Have you already set a date? She asked. Before Ellen could answer, I said, she's graduating in May next year, so we're planning a wedding in June. I'm not sure yet if it's the first week or the second, so reserve both. I expect to send out invitations in the first week of May. Ellen looked at me dumbfounded as Horace and Gail said they wouldn't miss it for the world, and then turned and went to talk to Stan Whitman. Ellen looked at me with an expression I couldn't read and then said, it seemed to me that I missed something. I seem to have forgotten about the conversation in which we set the wedding date. I also missed something else. Was I asleep when you asked me to marry you? That must have been it. You're wearing a wedding ring, and I couldn't put it on you if you didn't say yes. Are you serious? Yes, seriously. Why did everything turn 180 degrees? I remember you telling me that you didn't trust women and that you would never put yourself in a position to get hurt again. It was before you. It dawned on me that if I didn't make a single move, you would graduate, get your diploma, and move on with your life. I don't think I could go home without you there. I didn't have the courage to ask you directly, so I provoked you tonight. Don't you think that maybe you should have talked to me before you told Horace and Gail what you told them? What if I said, oh no, that's not true? Why would you do this? It was you who told everyone that we would set a date as soon as you received your diploma. Well, graduation is almost here. You're dodging the problem, Rob. What if I don't want to marry you? Then I don't think you'll do it. But she failed. The sex was satisfying, but it didn't distract me from thinking about Ellen. Whatever Tasha did, and none of it was bad, I thought, Ellen would do something wrong, or Ellen would do something like this. As I was getting dressed to leave, Tasha said, I like seeing you, Rob, and I'm not in a hurry to send you away, but if your feelings for this girl are as strong as you say, you need to do something about it. You need to find some way to stay in touch and be her friend. You need to show her that you're interested in her, but at the same time are willing to respect her wishes. I can understand her, Rob. I see that she feels the need to take a break from men. I thought about this myself once or twice. She seems to care about you, but she's not ready to settle down. Give her some space, Rob. Stay in touch, be a friend, but give her some space. I'm not sure I have the right to do this. It's just something I heard somewhere, but I say something like, if you love something, give it free rein. If it comes back to you, it means it was always yours. If not, then it was never yours to begin with. There was an Arts Council meeting on Friday night, and I was wondering how it would go because Gail was on the council. Of course, when the meeting ended, Gail grabbed me and invited me to have coffee with her. I couldn't be impolite, so I said, okay. I knew this was coming, so when she asked where Ellen had been lately, I had a story ready. I shrugged and said she needed some space. I haven't spoken to her for 3 weeks. Why on earth would she do something like that? I think she changed her mind about getting married. I just have this feeling, but she didn't start talking about this need for space until we started making actual wedding plans. It was Gail's turn to shrug, and she said, I can understand that. As my wedding approached, I was very nervous. More than once, I wanted to run away to the mountains. Hang in there, Rob. Everything will work out. I slept through Saturday morning and didn't get out of bed until almost 9. I was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, and reading the sports section of the daily newspaper when the phone rang. I grabbed the radio receiver from the stand and answered, Hello. Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Ellen. It's nice to hear your voice. You could have heard him earlier if you called. The phone works both ways, Ellen, as you found out this morning. You sound strange. Is it so? I assumed you didn't want to talk to me, so why did I call? This is funny, Rob. Why wouldn't I want to talk to you? I can only point to the fact that you didn't call for 2 weeks, didn't try to talk to me, and moved out. It was me who had to call you to find out where you were. And then there was that day in the cafeteria when you tried your best to avoid me and sat down at the other end of the hall. All this told me that you don't want to talk to me. Consequently, I didn't bother calling. So that's why you went to the agency instead of calling me? Partly because of this. I told you that nothing has changed except our living conditions. I fully expect to be your partner whenever you need one. There is no need to call the agency. I know, Ellen, but as soon as you left and explained why, I decided that it would be best for me to break up with you completely. It doesn't have to be like that, Rob. I think that for my well-being it should be so. I'm so sorry, Ellen. I need to clear something up, Rob. That day in the cafeteria, there was neither disdain nor my reluctance to talk to you. Paul is part of a group of 5 people who are working on an assigned class project for our business strategy class, and we were in the cafeteria to get coffee and talk about our part of the project. The table we sat at was chosen by Paul, not me. And, to be honest, I wasn't sure you'd want to talk to me. It seemed to me that you were in a hurry to find a place for me to stay for the night, to get me away from you. Come on, Ellen. You know why I did it. I explained this to you before we even went looking for an apartment. Yes, you explained it, Rob, and it made no more sense to me then than it does now. All I said was that I didn't want to get married right away, and that I needed some time to live a normal life without men as the main component of it. I never said that I didn't care about you, and I never said that you would completely disappear from my life. I told you what I want to do and why. Remember what you told me about how you felt after Sherry? You didn't want anything to do with women. This is exactly how I feel about my current career. I want to get away from men for a while. This is all. For a while, but not forever. I understand, Ellen, but it doesn't make me feel any better. It's not your fault, Ellen. It's all my fault. I was the one who allowed myself to fall in love with you. I was the one who decided to use an escort rather than go on dates and maybe find another woman to get me into it and then end up sticking to me. I was the one who chose you from everyone else in the agency's presentation video. I did this to myself, Ellen. Take care of yourself. Happy life. Bye. I hung up, and within seconds I felt sorry for myself again. By the afternoon, I was angry at myself for letting it get to me when I had the ways and means to do something about it. What's the point of having a lot of money if you don't use it? All it took was 4 phone calls. One is to Tasha to see if she is free during the week. One is to Bill Perkins, to inform him that he will be leading the company for a week. One to the charter company at the airport, and one to the hotel in Cabo San Lucas. At 6 p.m., Tasha and I were sipping champagne 6 miles up on a Learjet that was taking us to spend Thanksgiving week on the beach and in the sun. The days were filled with snorkeling, sailing, and lying on the beach soaking up the sun. We spent our nights with Tasha, doing everything she could think of to thank me for the paid vacation. I can honestly say that I never thought about Ellen until the approach when we were returning home and the Learjet lowered its landing gear. And then this happened only because it was at that moment that Tasha asked, "How are things going with Ellen?" "I followed your advice, honey. I let her go." She patted my hand and didn't say another word. When I walked her to the door, she kissed me deeply. And when she opened the door, I said, "If you ever decide to settle down with just one man, remember me, okay? You'll be number 1 on the list, Rob. I promise." The next 2 weeks flew by, and the only event I attended was one I attended alone. I had pretty much decided that as long as Tasha was available, I could do without women in my life. That doesn't mean there weren't women who wanted to be in my life, but I just didn't want the hassle anymore. Why spend so much time and effort building a relationship only to see it deteriorate? In the 3rd week of December, we had a corporate Christmas party. I rented one of the ballrooms at the Hilton and organized a live band and catering. Some of the girls in the office asked me if they could decorate the room, so I gave them a credit card and told them to use it. They had ribbons and bows everywhere and a Christmas tree in the corner with gifts underneath it. Mona, my secretary, organized a secret Santa gift exchange with a limit of $10, and I wrote Carol's name. I bought her a CD of her favorite singer, and even though it cost more than $10, I didn't think anyone would care. We had dinner, and then I gave a short speech, thanking everyone for helping make this a great year for the company, and then surprised everyone by handing out bonus checks that no one expected. Mona then took over handing out gifts under the tree, and when she called my name, I walked over and she handed me a small box. Returning to my seat, I opened it. On a cotton backing lay a key card with a note stuck to it that simply said, "Number 42. I quickly looked around the room, but no one was paying any attention to me. I pocketed the card and wondered who or what was waiting in room 412, but that would have to wait since I couldn't leave my own party. The group began to gather and I received the following surprise. All the women in the room stood up, walked over to my table and lined up. Mona was at the head of the line and asked me to stand. A little embarrassed, I complied with her request, and she came over and kissed me. "Merry Christmas, boss," she said, moving aside to let Sherry from accounting stand in front of me and kiss me. She also wished me a Merry Christmas before stepping aside to let Allison stand in front of me. Allison was one of the girls who asked me to let them do the decorating. She laughed at the look on my face and pointed upward. I looked and saw that I was standing under a large mistletoe bush. Mona and Sherry were married, but Allison was single, and when she kissed me, she deepened the kiss a little. When she broke the kiss and walked away, she licked her lips, smiled at me and said, "Yum." When she walked away, I wondered if it was her I would find in room 412. Mona then grabbed me and pulled me onto the dance floor. After Mona, I had to dance with all the other ladies, and all the women who kissed me under the mistletoe with their tongues made it a point to rub their feet against my groin. Betty was the most sassy. As soon as the music ended, she leaned towards me, licked my ear, and whispered, "Would you like to go back under the mistletoe?" I wanted to. Oh yes, of course I wanted to, but I asked, "What about your husband?" "He's not here, but you are." God knows I wanted her, but not only was she married, she was my employee, and I couldn't do it. I wouldn't do it to Betty's husband the way Marcy did to me, and even if I was lousy enough to do that to Betty, I knew that sex with a coworker was a serious taboo and could lead to tons and tons of problems. Then I thought, what if I find her in room 412? "Not a good idea," I told her. After that first time under the mistletoe, and then this dance, standing under that weed bush again will make me want to do something I shouldn't do. If you're worried about Tom, then don't be. He won't care if I tell him everything when I get home. That's only half the battle, Betty. Go work for Loomis and Bainbridge or some other company, and then have Tom call me and tell me everything is fine, and I'll pounce on you like a duck on a cockchafer, but I won't cuckold my husband or have an intimate relationship with you. Connection with a coworker, no matter how seductive it may be. She shrugged, stuck her tongue out at me and said, "A bully. You're no fun at all, and you'll never know what you've missed, because I love working for you, and I'm not going to change jobs." All I could do was laugh and walk her back to the table. Another hour, and the party started to wind down, and then it was time for me to make a decision. Should I go up to room 412 or not? Am I willing to risk finding Betty there waiting for me? I wouldn't want to refuse her twice in one evening, but I would refuse her for the reasons already given. But it's almost certain that whoever was in that room was an employee, and I'd have to turn her down as well. It's better not to even walk. Yes, exactly. There was no way I could go and see who was in 412. And perhaps my conclusion was wrong. Maybe it wasn't a woman there. Maybe there was a crowd of people there who wanted the party to continue. Be that as it may, curiosity insisted that I go up to the room. As I walked out of the ballroom, I saw Mona talking on her cell phone, and she waved goodbye to me. When I got to room 412, I put my ear to the door to see if I could hear the sounds of people having fun, but either there was no party or the door was too thick for sound to come through. I took a deep breath, inserted the key card into the slot, opened the door, and entered the room. I found the last thing in the world that one would expect. Lying on the bed in front of me, wearing only a large red bow, was Ellen. She threw the vibrator aside and said, "You need to hurry up, Bobby. I used it to warm up and get wet for you, and the batteries were almost dead." "What are you doing?" "Not now, Bobby," she said, sliding off the bed, kneeling in front of me and taking hold of my zipper. "We'll talk later, but right now there's a very hot woman in front of you who needs to be taken care of." It was an exhausting evening. We made love several times. Afterwards, lying with Ellen in my arms, I asked what she was doing here. "I woke up, Bobby. I woke up and realized that you might not be there when I decide to end my loneliness. I had to ask myself if the freedom I wanted for a while just to be alone was worth losing you. And the answer was a resounding, hell no! And here I am. If you're glad to see me, be sure to thank Mona for her help with the organization." "How do you know Mona?" "Have you forgotten that I am also an employee? I had to fill out insurance forms and things like that, and Mona was the one who handled those things. In addition, I had to go to the office every 2 weeks to collect my salary. Don't put your finger in Mona's mouth. She immediately understood what my job responsibilities were, and believe it or not, she was happy for you. She has taken a liking to me, and we meet for lunch at least once a week. I even met her and some other girls from the office for drinks after work. I became friends with many of them. They all helped me tonight. They were supposed to excite you and ensure that by the time you got here, you'd be so crazy with lust that you'd tear off your clothes and pounce on me. Have you been lying here all evening, waiting for the party to end?" "Of course not, stupid. Mona called me to let me know you were on your way so I could prepare for your arrival. I guess I really owe Mona a favor. Will her wedding invitation be enough?" "Don't know. Will there be a wedding? Any doubts?" "Well, yes. Something is missing here." "What? Shouldn't you make me an offer so that I can give an answer?" I rolled off the bed onto my knees and took her right hand in mine. "Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Well, I don't know. This is an important decision for a girl, and it takes some time to think about it. I'll give you the answer in the morning, but right now you need to climb back in so I can enjoy you again." Mona was actually at the wedding. She was Ellen's maid of honor. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.